And it's another Wednesday. Welcome to AM Business. Now, the collapse of 7 local banks in a space of 1 year has left many on edge over the prospects of the banking sector. And in AM Business this morning here on the AM show, we'll bring you a lot more in terms of where the crisis has left us.
Within a space of just 1 year, 7 banks, all of them local, have gone down. And guess what? 3 of these banks, I was actually banking with them. Well, so First Capital Plus Bank, and then indeed the Construction Bank, and the very first one, which, well, I can't find my checkbook, was the UT Bank. Exactly how their collapse has affected, 1, the economy, 2, labor, and indeed, well, the general governance of the banking sector. That's what I'll be drilling down on, well, on AM Business. On the 14th of August 2017, UT and Capital Bank had their licenses revoked by the regulator and some selected assets and liabilities purchased by GCB Bank and an over 2 billion cedis bond issued as a buffer in a move never seen before, and that has rocked the very foundation of the banking industry.
We have been engaging these banks for some time now. Those who had capital challenges by way of solvency, those who had liquidity challenges, we asked them to submit recapitalization plans, which were also going to address the liquidity challenges that they had. And they did. And we kept monitoring the situation as far as implementation is concerned, but we realized that they were not able to implement the plans that they submitted, and their financials kept deteriorating. So on the day that UT Bank went down, how did you report the issue? Did you see it coming as a journalist?
Anyone who has been following development in the industry would, and for a lot of people in the market, the players, they knew about all these things. The problem was when the action would be taken. And for a lot of people, the industry players was when would Bank of Ghana take the action rather than something that wouldn't happen.
By August 1st, 2018, the Bank of Ghana revoked the licenses of yet 5 other indigenous banks in the country. On the same day, a license was granted Consolidated Bank Ghana, a wholly state-owned bank with a stated capital of 450 million, exactly a year after the 2 banks had collapsed. This time, the bond issued was $5.76 billion to also serve as a buffer.
Unibank and Royal Bank were identified during the AQR update exercise in 2016 to be significantly undercapitalized. The 2 banks subsequently submitted capital restoration plans to the Bank of Ghana. These plans, however, yielded no success in returning the banks to solvency and compliance with prudential requirements. The official administrator appointed for Unibank in March 2018 has found that the bank is beyond rehabilitation. Shareholders, related and connected parties had taken amounts totaling 3.7 billion cedis, which were neither granted through the normal credit delivery process nor reported as part of the bank's loan portfolio. In addition, amounts totaling 1.6 billion had been granted to shareholders, related and connected parties in the form of loans and advances without due process and in breach of relevant provisions of Act 930. Altogether, shareholders, related and connected parties of Unibank had taken out an amount of 5.3 billion cedis, constituting 75% of total assets of the bank. In the case of Royal Bank, an on-site examination conducted by the Bank of Ghana on 31st March 2018 revealed a number of irregularities. Its non-performing loans constituted 78.8% of loans granted, owing to poor credit risk and liquidity risk management controls. A number of the bank's transactions, totaling 161.9 million cedis, were entered into with shareholders, related and connected parties, structured to circumvent single obligor limits, conceal related party exposure limits, and overstate the capital position of the bank for the purpose of complying with the capital adequacy requirement. In the case of Sovereign Bank Limited, as part of Bank of Ghana's investigations into the failure of Capital Bank Limited, currently in receivership, it emerged that Sovereign Bank's license was obtained by false pretenses through the use of suspicious and non-existent capital. The bank is insolvent and unable to meet daily liquidity obligations falling due. Liquidity support granted so far to the bank amounts to 21 million as at 31st July 2018. The bank has not been able to publish its audited accounts for December 2017 in violation of Section 90 of Act 930. Beige Bank and Construction Bank were each granted provisional licenses in 2016 and launched in 2017. Subsequent investigations conducted by the Bank of Ghana revealed that, similar to the case of Sovereign Bank, both banks obtained their banking licenses under false pretenses using suspicious and non-existent capital, which has resulted in a situation in which their reported capital is inaccessible to them for their operations. Ladies and gentlemen, to support the government's twin objective of financial stability and strengthening indigenous banks, the Bank of Ghana is consolidating the good assets and liabilities of Unibank Ghana Limited, the Royal Bank Limited, the Beige Bank Limited, Sovereign Bank Limited, and the Construction Bank Limited.
How could this happen? 5 banks in just a single move? Unprecedented, one may say, but a plethora of problems can be attributed to it.
Because everybody is now corporate governance. When a bank feels lack of corporate governance, when this company feels lack of corporate governance. But then there has to be an intentional, deliberate, and conscious efforts to implement good corporate governance. And I think the first thing is that as a country, we should provide some guidance. So Ghana must develop a generic corporate governance code. Generic in the sense that it can be tweaked and applied to different industries.
Mm-hmm. Any other problems?
Currently, whether or not they're using it for every single facility that they're giving out, or whether the banks are reporting all the facilities to us, is another issue. We don't have any way of knowing that. But if that is going on and they are actually doing their due diligence, which is pulling a report from the Bureau and checking the background before determining whether or not they should give a facility, if that is being done, the NPR should have been low, and been well maintained at a much lower level.
Corporate governance, corporate governance, corporate governance. What's all this about and why is it important? But obviously, this didn't happen in a vacuum. Apart from the various corporate governance issues, what happened to the watchdog? Did he sleep off?
We've had some challenges in time past. There have been forbearance. There have been some lapses in the supervisory processes.
In all of these, what does the finance minister say? The public funds that rescued the banks couldn't have moved without his sign-off.
Canada has 5 banks. Nigeria has 25. Do we need 34? And we don't. But do we need Ghanaians to participate in the financial industry? We do, but what type of Ghanaian should be in the financial industry? And that's a fit and proper test that has to come through. So as we envision it right now from the ministry, we are expecting the Consolidated Development Bank, Consolidated Bank would become, sort of equivalent to GCB, grow stronger with it, and that would be that. I think there are a whole bunch of indigenous banks, about 5, 6 of them, who have begun discussions on merger so that by the end of the year they can meet that. And we need to find a way to support that so they can maybe potentially concentrate on sort of a SME financing, which is key to our development. And that's what creates a vibrancy in the economy.
The resultant effect has already been felt. 1,700 workers under the Consolidated Bank Ghana are already being asked to go home. Labour expert Austin Game describes the affected victims as victims of circumstance.
Once there is a revocation of your, principal area, you have become vulnerable in one way or the other. You are not guaranteed any employment. So that should be borne in mind by all of us who work in the banking industry. It's a rigid regulatory environment.
Financial consultant Dr. Daniel Sedo is disturbed about the resultant effect on the economy, whilst the IMF takes a look at the impact on the national budget as bonds are issued, throwing the debt ceiling off gear.
The position of the companies they work for is negative, and the priority will go to depositors and creditors. And if you sort out the depositors and creditors, very likely there will be no money. So if there's no money, they cannot be paid. If we all agree that they should be paid, it means we have to raise the money, pay more tax for them to be paid. As simple as that. It's unfortunate, but that is what has happened to us. That is why you expect responsible leadership, because we have so many people working who must look after the business properly to look after everybody.
And that's
we fail to do that.
Leadership from, regulated leadership, from the management leadership, from the board.
Exactly so. Exactly so. We must understand banking is an enabler, but when we abuse banking, we run into problems.
This is government debt. Yes, therefore it's going to be classified as government debt. At the same time, these are one-off costs which are necessary. So yes, these are the important measures that the government had to, these are the important steps that the government had to take, and it has taken it to make sure that the cleanup of the banking sector continues and successfully accomplished.
That will have an implication on the program, because at the end of the year, initially, we were not factoring or looking forward to a 72% debt GDP ratio.
George, let me repeat that these are one-off costs. And obviously, at the beginning of the program, we were unable to envisage those costs as they come up. Since they're one-off, we will take it into account assessing the program.
As the Bank of Ghana is at it, doing some cleansing, the Institute of Internal Auditors Ghana wants them to begin demanding for copies of reports that goes to audit committees from internal auditors working within financial institutions, especially the commercial banks.
Your report goes to a board. It ends there. It ends there. So if the board decides not to do anything about it, that's it. That's it. Unless, of course, when I said it, somebody laughed, you want to be a whistleblower. But for those in public sector now, the internal auditors report, a copy must go to the Auditor General.
31 banks are currently left talks of a possible marriage between Sahel Sahara and Omni Bank may just save them the minimal capital requirement deadline. Indications are that 15 banks have strong financials which could meet the requirement, but the others may well have their licenses revoked or perhaps merged with others. Odilia Ntiamoa, Joy Business.
And that's AM Business for today. Catch us every Wednesday on the AM show. We'll bring you AM Business, brought to us courtesy EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. Coming up next on the AM show is a conversation between Kojayang Singh and the new presiding bishop of the Methodist Church. Enjoy it.